Welcome everybody to Beat the Shift Baseball. This is episode 123 for Thursday, October 14th. I'm Alex Uwe. I'm here today with Ray Estrada and a very, very special guest, our good friend Ben Rogness. And
I was hoping you were going to introduce me as like the resident like Giants ambassador, but that's cool. I'm okay with that.
Well, you will be tonight at the very least, because this postseason so far, this October, has been one to remember to this point, mainly because we have the World Series matchup in the division series, which is, you don't get to see that every year. But the Dodgers and the Giants, for those of you who know, Ray is our resident Dodger fanatic and I guess expert as well. And Ben is essentially that for the Giants side of things on the other side. So we are going toe-to-toe, Ray versus Ben. They're not actually competing. They're just going to kind of yell at each other. But, that's our
We're
plan.
not competing.
We don't even yell at each other. Like...
There will be no scoring process. There will be no scoring process involved tonight. But we will talk about all of the division series action to this point. And it has been very fascinating, very unexpected for a lot of people as well. So we'll get into all that. Before we do, I just want to remind you to follow us on social media at BeatTheShiftBP, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. That's the best place to get in touch with us. We want to hear what you think about these playoffs so far. And yeah, that's about it at BeatTheShiftBP.
Did you say YouTube? You just told me about the YouTube like 2 minutes ago.
Yeah, YouTube too. If you want to.
Punch that like button.
Look at you guys putting in the work here.
I'm trying to help you with your brand.
I'm just trying to keep it simple and not too much all at once, because I don't even get me started on the website. Whew, okay. We will, I promise, get into the juicy Giants and Dodgers matchup for Game 5, which, like I said, it's going to be World Series Game 7. Like you wouldn't believe, and that is tomorrow, Thursday night. For those listening ahead of time, if you listened after, then let us know how they did. Let us know how they did.
Yeah, you're gonna hear some bad takes. Like you're gonna be, oh, you idiots! Like, oh, he's so dumb. Why did he say that? It's like, whatever.
Only good takes here, Ben. I don't know if you've been paying attention. Don't look at our brackets. But the first thing that I have to ask you guys is more just from a fan perspective, because each of you were lucky enough to go to one of the division series games. Well, the wildcard game for Ray as well. And electric postseason environments from two teams that are no strangers to the playoffs, but it is both of your first year going, correct? First time going.
Yeah.
So I do want to get those juicy first time impressions. I've never been myself, so I have no frame of reference. You're telling me and a lot of people out there who've never had the chance to go what it's like to go to your first playoff game for the Giants and the Dodgers. So let's start with our guest, Ben. Tell us about the game. Tell us what it was like. Paint a picture.
Yeah, so I think the crazy thing to just imagine with all of the games, not even just the game that I went to, is that obviously because of last season and what's going on the past, year and a half, 2 years, a lot of people were really itching to just get back into that specific playoff environment. Because like Ray, I'm sure you went to a few games this season, just in like the regular season. I know I went to a few, and like that's cool and all, like limited capacity or whatever it was, but this is just, I need to be in like a sold out crowd. Everything's popping. And, especially with this Giants team, there's just so much anticipation around what was going to happen. Obviously, getting there was a nightmare, but that's kind of a given with San Francisco. But I mean, all I can really say is that didn't disappoint. I mean, I was telling you guys earlier before the podcast, that specific game, there's just something about the spacing of all of the events of the game. Buster Posey's first inning home run is definitely the most ear damage I'm ever going to have in my entire life. Like it, because I just remember like whispering to my dad, like, oh, where he's got the green light on the 3-0, and then he hits it into the water. He's like, oh my God. And like, there are people just hobbling over. Obviously, like there's nothing better than the postseason game and ending it on like a strikeout, especially if it's your home guy. And all the awesome events that happened throughout the game were just so electric. I just like it was almost overwhelming, but it was a surreal experience for sure.
Did you get one of those little rag things to twirl in the air?
The rally towel,
The
yeah,
rally
and it says
towels?
Brazilian on it. Dude, my right arm was so sore when we were walking out just because, like, I mean, because you wave it at pretty much anything. It doesn't have to be like anything significant. It's just like you stand up, you're yelling, just woo, and just waving it all around. So yeah, it's actually I just put it up on my wall the other day, and it's a fun little memento.
Nice. And I'll ask as well. What percentage of the time would you say you spent on your feet for that game, like, compared to a regular
Oh,
season game, especially?
well, compared to a regular season game, like 300%. I mean, I felt bad because for anyone that doesn't know, I'm 6'2", and there is this nice, very short family sitting directly behind us, and obviously, like I couldn't help myself for a lot of different stuff going on. So, I try to be considerate of that sometimes, but other times it's like, okay, listen, if you're at a Giants playoff game, you have to know that these moments warrant standing up. So, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. I'll try to be as courteous as I can and make some nice conversation. But um, like I said, especially with how many different events throughout the game happened that warranted like just like a screaming response, I was probably up at least every other batter.
Very cool. Very cool. And mirrored question for Ray. Any distinct differences to what Ben described at Dodger Stadium for really a one game elimination game
Yeah, I
first
mean,
off, and then the division series as well?
I yeah, going into the one game playoff, like it was just the excitement that I'm at a playoff game, I think, and kind of just putting myself in the game in a way, like being in the dugout, sort of, but being however many 100 feet away up in the stands. But it's just you're in it, you're involved in every pitch, and yeah, I mean, anything 2 outs, 2 strikes, you're on your feet waving the towel. Um, it's it was an amazing experience, and then to cap it off with a walk off, to have that
Oof,
moment
the
was
dream.
unreal.
Yeah.
Deafening even, I could
Oh yeah, I
imagine.
mean, we didn't even see the ball go over the fence. As soon as that ball left that bat, we knew it was over, and
Yeah.
you just started jumping and high fiving, hugging people.
Mhm.
Yeah. Ray, I just thought about something. The difference between like your game and my game is that like with the game one, there's like the safety net of knowing like, okay, well at least like, if we lose, like, I don't have to go home all like too sad or anything. There's a certain level of cheering that's way different with an elimination game where it's just like
Oh
you
yeah,
want to scream your head off, but also it's like, oh my God, I'm so scared right now. Like
oh yeah,
I don't
no,
want
the
to
the
be at the game
nervousness,
where we go home.
yeah, the nervousness set in around the seventh or eighth inning, like just like it's like, oh, Cardinals getting called base runners is tied 1-1. Don't get it's just, oh, it's stressful. And honestly, if the Giants had won game two, I was not going to go to game three. I wasn't going to be there for the
Oof.
Dodgers to get swept by the Giants.
Yeah, yeah. No, even like, as passionate of a Giants fan as I am, I don't think anybody wanted to see that be a sweep for either team, honestly. Like it wouldn't have been good for baseball. It's kind of just like, like kind of fizzled out, like whatever. Like
Baseball's done a lot
let's
of things that isn't good for baseball. So what's
let
the
yeah.
Dodgers or
Well,
Giants sweeping the series?
yeah, let's just be happy we got a game five. But anyway, so
Mm-hmm. It's gonna be crazy. I have, I guess, a tandem pair of questions for your head-to-head experiences here. Which one of you thinks you had the better food? I don't know if you had food at the ballpark even, but which one of you thinks you had better
ooh.
food at your
I just had
ballpark?
Dodger dogs.
And also, which one of you thinks you enjoyed more adult beverages or the effects of adult beverages for your
I
playoff
went
experience?
with my mom, so I could definitely have a couple more than I might be willing to
Nice.
normally. But
Not everybody would say
yeah,
that
it's good.
about going out to a sporting event or anywhere with their mom. So that's really cool.
But like,
I know.
Shout out
and
to Ray's
Yeah.
I have a
mom.
driver. I mean,
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
Ray's mom
know,
is
but
honestly
like
the best.
a lot of people would be thinking like, I can't do that in front of my mom. Are you kidding me? Like,
I think that, yeah.
oh
My
no,
so
yeah,
mom,
we
my
went to a
mom,
brewery beforehand
yeah,
both times.
shout out Ray's mom.
Ray's mom. Shout out to the
What
pizza
about
that one time at our game. It was
what
sweet.
about you, Ben?
Uh, so yeah, well, I went with my dad. So actually, it's kind of the opposite feeling. I wouldn't probably want to do it with my mom, but with my dad, like he was the one pushing more and like, hey, let me get you like an 805, like on my dime, and then funny story. He actually left because game time was like I think it was 6:37. He left at 6 to go get food, and I told him like I'm too nervous. I got to stay here. And he got back with like these chicken sandwiches. It was like skinless chicken breast at like 6:38. So he just missed like first pitch, which I felt really bad about, but he didn't see the mine. That was bomb. But I know Ray is more of a can put down a few more beverages than I, so I'm gonna defer to Ray on the alcohol intake there
Yeah,
probably.
I don't know how the craft beer selection is at eight at well, I was called AT&T Park.
Oracle or Oracle.
T-Mobile Park. What? SBC.
Wrong state, same coast, but nice try.
SBC.
Oh, I thought you were saying no, T-Mobile. That's the old. Is
Yeah, I
it
know.
Safeco in Seattle?
Like
That's
There's a lot of
5 years from now, it could totally be right. Like you never know.
yeah, Lone
Yeah,
Depot
right.
Park in Miami because everybody loves that. But I'm sure Oracle has some pretty good craft beer selection. Northern California has some very good breweries up there.
yes.
But the craft beer selection at Dodger Stadium, I was very impressed with. There's some good there's some good ones in there.
All right. For those of you that are intrigued with that side of the baseball experience, I got you. Um, and I think that did a pretty good job of painting a picture because you can watch it on TV and you see the crowd, you hear the crowd, but it's a totally different thing. You know, planning your whole day, your whole week around that experience and the anticipation. So thanks for sharing that, guys.
For
All
sure.
right.
I also just want to share the quirk of I went to 3 Dodgers games this year, and all 3 were started by Max Scherzer.
Did you
Good
would
luck.
you if I told you that in March, would you have believed me?
Oh God.
I would not have thought that you were going to be correct.
He would have been like, "Who do we trade away?"
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we have lots more Dodgers Giants to talk about. We're going to take a break from that whole side of things and get into the best of the rest. The playoffs so far have been really, really fun. Unless you're a Yankees fan. So I'm just going to like kind of just wallow in
Just shy away
self-pity
from
over
that.
here.
Yeah.
No, trust me, Yankees fans are not heartbroken about this one at all. Like every single Yankees fan that you ask will tell you our team sucked this year. And it was miraculous that they put together the run that they did to get themselves to the wild card game. But yeah, starting with that AL wild card game, it was kind of an open and shut game very quickly. Maybe the least anticipation of any of these high pressure games that we've seen so far. So, you know, Garrett Cole pitched awful, which is not a defining quality to him. I don't think like he was awesome last year in the playoffs. So clearly something was wrong, hamstring injury, whatever you want to go with. It didn't get the job done, and the Red Sox came out on top. Did either of you, while watching this game, feel anything other than just like, the Yankees lost, or is that pretty much the extent of it?
Yeah.
that was my central feeling, I guess. The weird thing is, you know how like there's always like one statistic that some people seem to focus on that like kind of tells you like, oh, this is the way the game's gonna go. So if you look at the pitching matchup in that game, like, you know, naturally you're gonna take Cole over anybody. And it was only like an hour before the game where I was watching ESPN and it said like some statistic about his ERA at Fenway Park. And then I finally like re-geared my thinking into going, oh, this could be really bad for him, huh? Like having like a 6.75 ERA against a team at their ballpark. It's not very good for an elimination game. And then obviously he played the game that he did. I was like, oh yeah, I guess that's true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, he just absolutely didn't have it. Like I thought he was going to pitch better. And I expected Evaldi to pitch well. He's always pitched well in the playoffs. We've seen that in the past few years. So I expected a pitcher's duel. Evaldi delivered on his side, and Garrett Cole just didn't on his.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then you have I guess for the Yankees, the famous the send where Stanton hit yet another ball off the wall. He was great that game, and Aaron Judge gets thrown out at home plate by I don't know half the base path basically. So. Everybody's on the Yankees coaching staff, the Yankees just general decision making. And oddly enough, this is my like brief Yankees tangent, like interlude to the whole Giants and Dodgers focus thing. it's so much blame going towards everybody but the players, because it's Aaron Boone's fault. It's it's the third base
Brian
coach's fault.
Cashman's fault.
It's Brian Cashman's fault for putting
That
this
play-
team together, or it's
That
the
play is
ownership's
Giancarlo
fault.
Stanton's fault.
Yeah, just hit it higher, dummy.
No, be on second base and actually like there's no other play to be made, so they're like, oh, he's going home.
No,
If he's
I
at
mean
least going to
he
second
would have
base, there's
been
a hesitation.
he would have been cooked. I don't think there would have been hesitation. But the point remains that yes, that play brutally devastating from a momentum standpoint, and it's just funny just summarizing the entire season encapsulated by that wild card game, just how much of the hatred goes towards Aaron Boone and in how he manages the team, or oh, Cashman put together a too heavy of a strikeout non-athletic team, like what's he thinking? Of course this is going to happen. And I don't know, I sit here and think like these armchair managers or armchair GMs really 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 annoy the crap out of me as a Yankees fan, because they're
you
so
and me talked
dumb.
about it.
So many of these takes are
You and
so
me,
dumb.
Well, you and me talked about it though,
That's
so yeah,
true.
let's get
That's
into it
true.
then, because I was one of those people that I said, and I'll be honest with you, I think I'm still going to stick with what I said. These high strikeout teams are the ones that are struggling the most against these elite pitchers that they're facing. The Giants are one of them, and they've been struggling against the Dodgers aces. The Astros are not struggling because they don't really strike out. The Rays were one of those teams, and they couldn't score enough runs against the Red Sox pitchers. So I think that has some validity to it. I mean, the fact that you could only get 2 runs off of Eovaldi and the Red Sox pitching staff screams volumes about the strikeout rate of that team. And I think it is relevant for anyone looking to make a deep run into the playoffs. And I think it stands for generally the teams that are succeeding. They're not striking out as much, and the other way around. I firmly believe that.
Yeah, it's a sense of balance, because for the longest time the Dodgers failed in the playoffs because they had guys who struck out a lot, especially in the
Yeah.
playoffs. But as soon as those
Yeah.
guys started to put more balls in play and strike out less, obviously it comes down to taking pitches. If you work counts and get starters out early, you are going to be successful in the playoffs. And I mean, the Yankees, they showed it on. I watched Statcast broadcast. The Yankees had like one of the lowest like swing rates in the league, and all of a sudden they swung at like 65% of the balls early on. Like Rizzo swung at the first pitch of the day and ground out to first, and very quick innings for the Red Sox pitchers in that game. The Yankees are just swinging freely, a lot of fly balls, and did not put any pressure on that defense.
Yeah, that's an interesting point with the wild card. That wild card game too that was the topic. Is like these Yankees are really aggressive, and they were making outs. If you're making outs on the balls you swing at, it doesn't matter what your balls in play rate is, and that was kind of just the reality of it. I mean, you talked about it too. Like we had this conversation that so many of the top offensive teams are not hindered by strikeout rate. Like a lot of them do strike out at a pretty decent clip. And the fact is that they take pitches as well. They walk, and the difference really is just like when they are hitting the ball, they're doing a lot of damage. The Giants led the league in homers, and that's a big difference between. Or I even a more close comparison would be the Rays, really, who this year scored the second most runs in baseball, had a higher strikeout rate than the Yankees, and a lower walk rate by a good margin, and they just crushed the ball.
And like
that's the difference.
My larger point is my larger point being is that what I was trying to say earlier is like, if you're playing like bottom league, swinging for the fences against like bad pitching and you're striking out, but you're also hitting the ball hard, like that's fine against average pitching. It's a lot harder to make that consistent amount of like power contact when you're going against Max Scherzer, Walker Buehler, Julio Urias, like those kind of pitchers, those elite pitchers where it's like, oh shoot, suddenly our offense disappeared. And look, the Giants are not hitting home runs. The Rays were not hitting home runs. And it's like, oh shoot, we've met our match. And now, look at the Rays, they're out. Giants very well could be on their way out. Like, I think that theory still stands.
I think that's more of a concept than really what happens in practice. Because you look at elite pitchers, like Max Scherzer especially is notorious for struggling with his home run rate, because that's the biggest hole in his game, is he gives up a lot of home runs, and that is because he goes right after guys. He's one of the best pitchers in the game, but
Mm.
at that same time, you're like, this isn't going to work against the aces, the studs with electric stuff, which there's more and more of these pitchers who just have really, really high swing and miss stuff to where,
Mm.
say you get your pitch and you put good wood on it and you get a single out of it, and that's what you're trying to do, then you have to put together a lot more of those, barrels on mistake pitches than if you really do a lot of damage on that same mistake pitch. Like if you're talking about a Max Scherzer fastball mistake down the middle, how many of those are you going to get in a game? Well, you want to do some damage on that pitch rather than take a very conservative approach and have to string together 2 or 3 hits to scratch a run across. So as a concept on both sides of it, the argument can be made, and in practice there's no right answer. The analytics definitely show that hitting for power and putting up those kinds of production numbers, pay more dividends, and that's why a lot of teams go that direction. And you could still argue against it in tight games like this. I'm sure it'll be a topic for these Dodgers and Giants, which also not a lot of home runs because of some of the conditions in the ballparks that they play in.
No, you don't say.
Yeah, so maybe not the best example there, but just good baseball conversation that came from a Yankees focused wild card game discussion.
Yeah, right. Thank you, Yankees.
For demonstrating this.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there will be a lot of other Yankees nonsense that we talk about in the future, but give credit to the Red Sox where it's due. They got some guys that were really, really putting it together at the right time, and they did it to the best team in the AL as well, or record-wise, that is, in the division series against Tampa Bay. I think caught everybody off guard. There were not a lot of people that had the Red Sox going through that series. And Ray, I guess I'll throw it to you. Do you have any major takeaways with what worked for the Red Sox particularly well, or maybe some less
the Red
obvious
Sox
things?
hitting stayed hot, and I think our concerns about the shallowness of the Rays pitching came to fruition. Especially in that game too. Shane Baz went a couple. He got bailed out by that Luplow grand slam off Chris Sale, but he gave up. I think he gave up 2 runs in that outing. Didn't go very deep, and then all of a sudden you have just the Rays throw whoever up, but their bullpen this year wasn't full of guys who were super scary, I would say. They still clearly have a lot of guys throw hard, but you didn't have the Castillos, the Alvarados, the Fairbanks, Nick Andersons. You didn't have 4 or 5 guys who could be a closer on any given team. You had JT Shagwell, Colin McHugh, Fire Eyes has been good, but there's not really that 4 or 5 headed monster in the back end of the Rays bullpen that afforded them the flexibility to have a rookie in Shane Baz going, who has been in the major leagues for 3.5 weeks for starting game 2, and then Drew Rasmussen a good story to get back, and that game went 14 innings, but the Rays pitching depth was not what it was last year, especially on the starting end and in the bullpen as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and well, the starting end especially, that was the biggest difference this year versus last year. I think, Ben, we discussed this as well, just the concept of you can have a great bullpen, but anytime that you have to send out 6, 7, 8 guys on any given night, you're expecting all of them to be on. If any one of them is off, which you saw in that deciding game with Shane McClanahan, if any one of them is off, it's over. Really, like, you're putting your faith in. That's a lot more dice rolls that you have to get through there. Even if they are all individually and in a large sample size, very good pitchers.
Yeah, and we saw, well, actually, not to swing it too much back over to the Giants and Dodgers again, but we saw a lot throughout both of their seasons. They relied on these bullpen games. A lot of it was led by Gonsolin, and they kind of throw together some games down the stretch. I know the Giants did it a few times when they were down some starters. And the only main benefit of obviously getting to do that in the regular season is you're probably trying to, rest your starters a little more, take the load off. But if you're having to do it more, like you said, where you're having to throw 5 or 6 of those guys in there, you don't have anything left to save for your starters, because it's like, you need every one of your guys to be on. And like you just said, if any of them aren't on, I mean, that's the difference between a 1 or 2 run loss. And So, any team that's had to rely on that, and obviously the Rays did, I mean, they weren't going to last that way.
Mm. Well,
So, but I mean,
I can't say I'm sad to see them go personally, but
mhm,
they're going to be back. They're there every year. They put that team together. Uh, totally
yeah,
different cast of characters. They get back there and they got there really convincingly this year. Okay, one more baseball discussion, kind of stemming from this series as well. Um,
mm.
the Kevin Kiermaier double, the ground rule double, one of the weirdest plays that was finished on the Red Sox side the next half inning by a walk-off 2-run home run, which I guess you could argue anyway, like, well, the Red Sox would have won it on that, regardless if if all the rest of the events unfolded the same way. But what a ridiculous play. Hits off of the right fielder after bouncing off the wall, then the ground, and then Hunter Renfroe and goes over. That's a ground rule double. There have been other plays that happened like that as well in the past. Like online, there were
including for the Rays, where Kevin Cash argued that the runner should have been put back at third, like 2 years ago.
yeah, it's happened before. It's never on the stage like this though. So, what do you think about that? That's a very odd play, and even of even a more I guess puzzling rule that's there to begin with. Ben, like, what did you think when you saw that? Were you like, that
I
doesn't seem right, or were you like, oh
I
well?
didn't really know it. Well, it's just here's the problem is that, and I kind of felt silly not wanting to comment on it even at first. It's just like I really don't know what's supposed to happen here. Like I'm looking at it and I'm like, okay, naturally, what's my reaction? I'm like, okay, the ball's over the fence, it's a ground rule double, and then you look at the replays and it's like, well, no, they hit off of him, but then it did that, and then now he's at second, but he's at third. Is it like what am I looking at here? So it just made it really hard to process or have a strong take on anything. When in reality, as it was, I was like I'm not going to pretend to know what I'm talking about here because this just looks confusing, especially on such a massive scale as the playoffs. I mean, it was just weird.
Yeah, and if you ask me, we're getting up to CBA time. We'll have more discussions about this, I'm sure. But an easy enough rule change would be umpire's discretion on a play like that. Especially, you just add the clause if touched by a fielder, then it's
Yeah.
up to the umpires to place the runners. And that was a
Well,
very clear
because
case where the run would have scored. Like he was at third base when the ball like hit off of Renfroe. So
yeah, because like if you have too loose of an interpretation of the rule or whatever the current version of the rule is, I mean, you could just have an outfielder bat it with his glove into the stands. It's like, oh no, you have to like
mhm.
go back to second now, and then like and I think that's a good point about umpire discretion. It's just like, okay, well, obviously, like if it's a similar play like I just described, it's like, okay, obviously he hit it out. It's like the fielder hit it out of the field of play. That's one thing, but I don't know. I like your suggestion.
Yeah, absolutely wacky play nonetheless. There was actually a very wacky play in the White Sox Astro series, which is the other AL side series. We'll go through this one a little bit faster just because
Mm,
Houston kind of wiped the floor with with the White Sox in an
yeah.
unfortunate way. But there was a weird play where Yasmani Grandal hit a ground ball to first base and the throw is coming home, and he gets hit by the throw coming to home plate, and you're running inside the baseline in the grass, which isn't uncommon, but definitely didn't get out of the way. Wears it in the arm to deflect the throw, and they get the run, whatever. And it can't be called interference. And as somebody who like distinctly remembers this happening to Trey Turner on just like a daily basis, the Trey Turner rule where he the catcher throwing to first base going the other way, like if you're slightly inside that base path and the play can't be made. Oh, interference, you're out. And it's such a weird clause. Like I don't even know what the exact language was to make it
Yeah. Well,
non-reviewable,
so
or just the fact that it wasn't like the play wasn't being made at the base. Like it was a totally separate throw, like not
that
towards
that
first
that is
base.
that is what it is. The trade turn call was still terrible in
Yes.
2019 World Series. But this play, as they explained on the broadcast, because it's a throw home and not like a throw to first base, or you
Mm,
Grandal has the right to establish his baseline, which he does. He
yeah,
doesn't
that's what I
like
was gonna say.
stick a
Yeah.
hand out. He's running. and he's kind of sees where the throw is going to go, so he kind of establishes his baseline well inside the line, and yeah, he gets plunked by the ball from Gurriel, and he's just running. He's just a runner
Mhm.
at that point, and the throw is going home, so he's not interfering with his out. I guess I don't know the exact language of how to phrase it, but the fact that it's not a play at first, he has no obligation to
Yeah.
be in the runner's box. And
Yeah.
even then, I don't know if he was. I don't know if he was even at the point where the runner's box begins. So that might have also been another aspect of that.
Mm. Yeah, it is
Yeah,
weird.
you
And
kind of took the words out of my mouth. Yeah, it's about. I mean, the establishing the baseline thing is just about where I was going with it. It's like it's so bang bang when it's happening, especially with how fast everything's going on. It's kind of hard to just be like, well, hold on. Like I saw him shift over a half step to the left. It's like,
Mhm. It's maybe the most arbitrary rule in baseball. I even heard like in the broadcast they were talking about how technically the runner can just run straight at the pitcher's mound if he wants to
Yeah,
establish his baseline and then curve towards first base. Like, could you imagine? That would be wild.
someone might do it one of these days. You never know. You never know.
Well, yeah, and it's the same case that I see too. Like I've brought this up in the past, more related to tag plays and like the out of the
nobody can run
baseline.
anywhere.
Like
Ooh, stop it.
you can't like you can't even juke a guy tagging you without being called on the base path. And yeah, my proposition was that let the base runners run wherever the heck they like. You can make them stay on the infield. Maybe that would be a good limiting
Mm.
thing there. But like, why does it matter if they have to like run loops around like they're not getting close to the base? Like make the fielder get you out and make it a little bit more exciting of a chase. Where like, oh, he made an awesome juke to evade this fielder who's in the base path, but you're out anyway. It's all arbitrary. It's very weird. Um,
Can we just like make like an X across all the bases, like a base path through from third to first that cuts through the pitcher mound and then second to home, and we'll find like a new way to add a base. Like that could be interesting. Shake up baseball, you know?
well, apparently that's how like before officiating was very good and there was just one umpire in the field. Sometimes base runners would just run right across the infield to third base and hope nobody noticed. And apparently that was like kind of the norm with less
The
vigilant
baseball needs.
officiating. So maybe that'll make a comeback. All right, yeah, just another weird note there. The Astros do look very good. Their offense was one of the best in the regular season. It stayed that way. And the White Sox had one good game where they put on an offensive show at home. So at least they got that going for
Yeah,
them.
yeah.
The rest of it,
The one good memory.
yeah, they have that one memory. But yeah, the Astros proved to be too much for them. And credit where it's due. Postseason Lance McCullers, the rest of their pitching staff was quite good against a really,
Yeah,
really good lineup.
yeah. I'm most concerned about their bullpen. Like they obviously have a lot of good starters, but I have a feeling that relief pitching is what's going to carry them if they continue
Mm.
past the ALCS.
Yeah, it would have to. Their pitching is much weaker than in years past. Of course, not having
Yeah,
guys like Verlander, Cole at
Verlander,
the helm.
yeah,
Um,
Charlie Morton, yeah.
oh, I didn't even think about this too. But one of the storylines you talk about having guys put the ball in play was the White Sox didn't have an extra base hit until that first game that they won at home through that series. It was all singles through
Ooh.
that point, and they were not putting it together against less than awesome Astros pitching. So there's a counterpoint to like you just put the ball in play enough, maybe it'll happen. Like they didn't do any damage until they started
Okay,
crushing balls. I don't know.
it's called the balance, Uwe. I'm not saying just plinking bunts everywhere and popping it over the shortstop. I get it.
Ah,
I get
they were
it.
piecing balls.
Okay.
I know it's just a circumstance that I'm pointing to, but it's kind of funny that we were just talking about that as well, and that was a
Yeah,
major
it is
storyline for
interesting.
them. So Astros, Red Sox, just on the AL side, like which one do you think is stronger here? I don't think any of us had them in this matchup, but if you had to pick one,
I
who are you
don't think
picking?
people
No.
wanted us to. I mean, I think the general conversation around baseball is nobody really had this because nobody, maybe not nobody, but like it's obviously not like a matchup you really root for obvious reasons. I mean, I don't
I
know.
am
The Red
miserable.
Sox, well, no, especially like, well, I mean, you just look at all the different fan bases. Like, and to me, I think because the Red Sox, in theory, like they are like an exciting batting team. Like for baseball standards, I do kind of like them. It's just like a recent postseason success, and it's just like
You have Red
it's not,
Sox fatigue.
especially. Exactly. And then for obvious reasons with the Astros, I mean, if you're not an Astros fans, you want to see them eliminated immediately. It just so happens that they have an amazing, well-rounded ball club this year. And, I wanted to get into this later once we got back into the Giants-Dodgers talk, but the reality is that regardless of who wins Dodgers Giants, if you care about baseball, you're going to want to see either the Dodgers or Giants play the Astros in the World Series because it's the ultimate like good versus evil. You have the two best ball clubs, the Dodgers and Giants, and literally everyone else will be rooting against the Astros. That's like baseball. Everyone's going to want to be watching the Dodgers, obviously for revenge reasons, and the Giants, who arguably have put together like a baseball team like the right way, if that's even like the correct way to put it. Like it's just like, oh, like the Astros did it the wrong way and they cheated, and you have the Giants who have like these weird veterans and a very deep, a lot of deep bench players. Like it's, I don't know. Either way, that if you're a baseball fan, that's probably the matchup that you want to see is Astros versus Dodgers or Giants. I feel like
that's an interesting
like,
take.
Yeah, this ALCS, MLB is going to try its best to make you forget that these two teams, or a lot of the people involved with these two teams, that they deserve to be here. I mean, the Astros are a very good team, but they're still a very good team because they didn't get punished for cheating. And who ran that cheating? The current manager of the Boston Red Sox. He lost his job for 1 year and they got it back.
that's true. I forgot about that.
I like the Red Sox players. I obviously like Verdugo and Kike Hernandez. I like a lot of their guys. I like Bogarts and Devers.
Schwarber, man, I'm a Schwarber guy all the way. I'm glad at the season he's having.
But just seeing Alex Cora there, you're just reminded that nobody really got punished.
A lot of ugly memories.
Yeah. Yeah. And, AJ Hinch is, he got a worse job with the Tigers, but, Alex Cora got stopped on the wrist. He got suspended for a year. And, the Yankees, the Astros, they returned to the ALCS once again after being shoved into the playoffs last year because of a terrible system. And it's put me in a terrible position of like, if the Giants do beat the Dodgers tomorrow night, there's a scenario where I might have to root for the Giants over either team.
And baseball commends you for it.
Or I have to root for the Braves and the Chop, which is awful. So there's a lot of like I said, there's a lot of great things that MLB is promoting here.
It's so stressful. Oh man, I love it.
So do you think Boston or Houston comes out on top, Ray?
I think Houston. Objectively, same. I think Houston. The lineup is too strong, and their pitching, as shallow as we say it is, it's still deeper, I think, than Boston's is.
Except, mind you, the health concerns with Lance McCullary Jr., who we know playoff Lance is a different animal. He has been experienced forearm tightness in his last start in the division series, which is never a good thing. And especially concerning if he decides to pitch through it. He's had, I believe, Tommy John and other injuries that even set him back even longer, either in that same recovery process or earlier on. So he's had a lot of injury problems throughout his career. If that proves to either make him pitch poorly or knock him out as a factor, I'm going to take the Red Sox. And you're pitching on the backs of new arrival postseason Nick Pivetta, who is just absolutely disgusting. Like, where has that been? Not to mention, like, extremely fun to watch. Like, I was having fun watching him just, strutting off the mound and doing his thing. Like, I don't know. That's that kind of energy. I don't know. It feels better than if, I don't know, the alternatives. But yeah, I think the Red Sox do come away if Houston loses their best starter, honestly.
Yeah. I think the series will go deep, but I do have to give the Astros a slight edge. But you're right, that McCullers asterisk is it's a lot to think about.
Mm-hmm. All right, we talked a lot of American League. Now we're getting to the good stuff here. Well, the National League wildcard game we kind of talked about when Ray was there. He had the walk-off home run by Chris Taylor. It was a nail-biter of a game. Adam Wainwright did his thing. He was grooving, and that's kind of
Yeah,
what
he
he
gave
did all
up
year.
his first postseason home run on a curveball to Justin Turner.
Who
Like that stat in and of itself, I think he's thrown, or up to that point, it was 551 curveballs in the postseason, and that was the first one that got hit for a home run.
That's insane. That's a crazy stat.
Yeah.
Is Justin Turner's kind of known to be one of the better breaking ball hitters in a Dodgers lineup that really crushes fastballs, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
He's also just one
Mostly
of the best postseason hitters in Dodger hitter.
Well,
in
there's
Dodger
that
history,
too.
if not the best
There's
postseason.
that too. But
that helps.
a notoriously weak breaking ball hitting team in the Dodgers, which is kind of bizarre when you think about it. But they had just enough to get it done, and it was off the bat of Chris Taylor, who's not even starting games.
And on another breaking ball.
Yeah. And on a breaking
I told
ball,
you I had
right?
more.
I wait with anticipation. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say. I mean, it's even obviously coming from a Giants fan. I mean, it's always hard to root against someone with a story like Wainwright, and especially at his age and the game that he pitched. But I mean, it was just, despite the fact it was a close game, watching on the way through, it was just evident that by the end of this incredible hot streak that the Cardinals were on, there was just this general feeling of, yeah, we're out of gas. Like, I mean, you could just see with the at bats. The at bats looked a little lazy, in my opinion, and they didn't look like there was any way that they were going to put anything else together. And the Dodgers obviously, a lot to prove. And I don't know. I wasn't, as soon as Taylor hit the home run, like, it was weird. Like, for the sake of baseball, you and I talked about this before the game. It's like this series between the Giants needed to happen, especially this season. It just needed to happen. So I was actually happy when I saw that go, but it was still kind of like it's just out of instinct. It also was like, gosh, it's the Dodgers. But I don't know. I can't lie and say I wasn't super delighted to see that this is going to be in the works.
Mm-hmm. It really has shaped up to be one of the most insane playoff series, especially in the division series round, that I can remember. And then on the other side of that, you had Milwaukee and Atlanta, kind of toiling. I said in the prediction, I might have got this part right and said that these are the two weakest teams in the entire playoffs.
I think I agreed with you.
Leave the Yankees alone on this one. Just ignore that for a second, and let's look at these two teams that, you look at the runs scored in this game. First of all, like, yeah, there's good pitching, but teams that didn't score, I'm surprised that both teams scratched across more than 4 runs in the deciding game. Good for them. Good for them.
Yeah. So going
to
the Brewers to start, it's like I feel like the biggest misconception, and I think it depends based on where you get your baseball information from. Primarily for me, I'll admit it's like Instagram.
Mhm.
MLB Instagram eats up the Corbin Burns, Brandon Woodruff combo because they're great pitchers. I mean, anyone in baseball anywhere recognizes that they're two of the best in the game. When you see two dominant pitchers like that, it's very easy to think to yourself, oh yeah, like their starting rotation solid. And it wasn't until you and I talked that it's like, oh wait, shoot, like outside of that, what do they have? You have a washed MVP in Kristen Yelich. Your best power hitter at the moment and really hitter overall right now is like Rowdy Tellez. Like, just outside of that, they just weren't putting anything together, and it definitely came to light in that whole series.
Yeah, the Brewers got shut out back-to-back games in that mix as well after they won game 1 off of none other than Rowdy Tellez. And it's not like the Braves are running out like unhittable pitchers. Like, much better. This time of year with Morton and Fried and Ian Anderson look disgusting as well. So that'll work. That'll play anywhere. But yeah, man. My question before was just who from the Brewers is going to do it, and the answer was nobody. So,
I mean, the name that pops up in my head that I thought maybe was like, oh yeah, like Willie Adames could like put something together, like why not? Like, he was good for a little while, and that just didn't happen either. So,
but then they didn't remember what he did in the postseason last year for the Rays, which was nothing.
Yeah,
it's true.
You get traded from the Rays, you should be reflecting on a lot. Like, oh no, what happened? Why did this happen?
No. Anti-Mr. October. He's no Randy. He's no Randy.
He's no Brandon Lau though. We didn't even
Yeah,
talk
true.
about that.
That's
0
that's
for
what the
in the
kids
series.
say. That's what the kids say. He's no Brandon Lau, man.
Basically 2 postseasons in a row for the Rays with 0 production, and they keep starting him in like the 2 or 3 spot in the lineup or leading off,
Lead
like
off sometimes.
lead off sometimes too. Crazy, absolutely insane coaching decision there, which I don't know.
It's almost like Kevin Cash isn't the greatest manager.
Almost.
No.
But yeah, that's not good if you didn't know. To go over
It's also
in a
just
playoff
crazy to
series.
have like a GM like the Rays GM, where it's like you put together a team like that can consistently win that many games, and you're like really good at that part of your job, but you can't figure out how to get people in the stands. Like that's just like which one would you rather
Oh,
have?
that's a different can of
Well,
worms right there.
the easy answer is put the stadium in Tampa and not
Or put
Long
half the
Island.
stadium.
Yeah.
Put half the stadium in Montreal.
Yes.
Yeah, true.
Mm.
Genius. I like your thinking. Yeah.
Little teaser.
Ooh.
All right. Do you have anything more on the Brewers?
My
and
last
Braves, though?
note on the Atlanta Milwaukee series is I think it's how you and I both said it would play out, where Burns and or Woodruff are beatable by a solid Braves lineup, only because the Brewers might not score. That's exactly what happened, especially in games 2 and 3. You had the Brewers failed to score after pinch hitting for Freddie Peralta, who was doing very well in that game, and then Jocktober happened again.
Yeah,
off
dude,
of Adrian Hauser, so.
former Dodgers, really the story of this playoffs so far.
Seriously, it's true. It's really true.
Just
Can't even
sign
contest that.
former Dodgers platoon players, and you're pretty much set, is what I'm hearing. All right, and now we're to the moment that we've all been waiting for. A good 47 minutes into recording. I did check that, just so you know. But for real, these two teams, with the win totals that they had, by the way, blowing away the previous record for most regular season wins between two teams playing in an elimination game in the playoffs. Combined 113 is the number, right? 106 and 107 for the final tallies.
213.
Or
Well,
213, yeah,
it's
sorry.
also like someone
off.
brought up a good point earlier that at this point now that they're technically tied at 109 each.
Yes.
Including the play, which I like the way that sounds better.
It does sound
like ooh.
But the next
It's
the
like
next
the perfect
most
tie.
The next most, if you take the sum of wins between two teams playing an elimination game, is like 206 versus 213. Like that's a considerable number of wins. 7 even. Yeah. So that's a lot. Good math there. Yeah. It's so impressive, really, what the Giants,
teams that beat each other a lot in the regular season.
It's really been the two teams going at it all year, and for their histories as well. That's always a big deal as well. But the Giants, the storyline the whole year, that they held off the Dodgers, because the Dodgers on paper, they have it all. They had it all coming into the season, and then they didn't have it all for a while. They had nothing from Cody Bellinger and not really a sharp Mookie Betts, and had some other like injuries and hiccups throughout the season. And you're like, all right, especially with the Giants doing what they're doing, needed to make a big move and go ahead and get the two best available trade pieces on the market in Trey Turner and Max Scherzer. And you're like, oh, okay, now what are the Giants going to do? And they just kept winning the whole time. And if you, Ben, want to just give a summary of what you think it is that got it done in simplest terms possible. I know you could go through the entire lineup of players on that team because they really do all contribute, but more just in a general sense, like how do the Giants overcome the fact that they don't have any star power and they just win games?
Yeah, well, I mean, and obviously, the addition of Chris Bryant is that star power, but I mean, even obviously before that, it's that they were doing just fine without him. And while he's been like a nice X factor and everything, and I love me some Chris Bryant, you already said that I could probably identify about 20 different reasons or 20 different reasons for different players on what works. And, if you'd asked me 2 years ago if I was saying this, who I'd give the cred to, you wouldn't have caught me dead saying it'd be Gabe Kapler. I mean, it's probably the only award race for a while that will be unanimous is just NL Coach of the Year. I mean, if you watched enough of the games, a lot of it, the Giants led the league in pinch hit home runs. I mean, for some reason, having this crazy situational awareness of what each player does exactly right at its exact time, defensive arrangements, timely relief pitching, it's impossible, especially with the talent that's on the team. That, let's face it, I mean, at the beginning of the season, this is like the third time as a Giants fan with some of these guys where like, okay, this is like their final run. Like, might as well give them like a proper send off. Brandon Crawford, Brandon Belt, Buster Posey, like all those guys are gone after the season, and just this crazy synergy and chemistry. And the number one thing I think they did well was finally realizing the best way to use Buster Posey again, which is just like the two on, one off sort of deal. Obviously, Kirk Casale wasn't exactly like a huge luxury, but I mean, he still got the job done and caught a lot of great games.
Did he catch like
And I
the
feel like
most
that was
shutouts
huge.
this year or something stupid
Yeah,
like that?
Yeah, yeah. Well, there was a series I remember. I think it was in May where I know that he had caught 5 in a row, and that's when I kind of woke up and went, "Okay, I'm okay if this guy bats like 200 on the dot. Like he catches some mean games." Um, so I mean, if I'm trying to simplify it, yes, it's just Kapler's ability to really just understand what each of these guys could do exactly when they needed to do it, and that's the only. I mean, that's the only way I can imagine them being as consistently good as they've been the entire season. I mean, there weren't any super long losing streaks or periods where we really lost hope. It was just they just kept doing it, and you know that's I think that's just the collective feeling of everything they've been through and everything the Dodgers have been through, and really that's just why tomorrow is just such a crazy moment in sports history of like all those feelings of the past couple months coming to a head.
Yeah. And again, like no star power, but they 100% did it the new school model of offense in Major League Baseball just by hitting a ton of homers, which,
Mm-hmm.
like, how, first of all, in that ballpark with those guys that they have doing the
Mm-hmm.
amount of damage in spreading it all out. They led the National League in homers. I was just looking at this though. It's kind of interesting. They were ahead of the Blue Jays by like by a little bit. They were kind of going back and forth there for a while. The Blue Jays ended
Yeah.
up with like 21 more homers than the Giants. The Blue Jays went absolutely ham in that last month and still missed the playoff. Like that's just disappointing. But
Yeah.
yeah, the Giants led the National League uh, ahead of the Braves, ahead of the Dodgers. So yeah, big power from guys like Brandon Belt and Brandon Crawford, Lamont Wade.
Yeah.
Like everybody just hit enough, really.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of it, I would have to try to find the statistic on it too, but I mean, the amount of just comeback wins. I mean, it was usually a lot of, it wasn't ever like anything too insurmountable, but like, I'm sure you've heard the nickname Late Night Lamont going
Mm-hmm.
around. He led the league in go ahead or game winning hits, like in the entire Major League Baseball. So it's like, okay, well, and that's just one example. Like, I know Kirk Casale had like three, like a few other guys here and there. It's just like, for some reason, you just be watching these games, and when I keep on hearing people say luckiest team in baseball, I'm not going to argue that because it just kept on happening. But like that can't, by definition, be luck if you won the most, if you had the most wins in franchise history. Like that, you don't get there on accident. So
You need
it's
to be good and you need to be lucky.
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
They were
So
both.
yeah, what a time.
So
Exactly.
that's the statement for the Giants. The Dodgers are a little
Yes.
less interesting because going into the season, I was just like, they're the best. They're the best. I don't know what anybody's gonna do against them. And Ray, if you just kind of want to like briefly summarize the struggles that arose throughout the season to show us that's not the case, and we're gonna have to play a 1 game wild card to get ourselves in here to prove
Well,
that
yeah, you
we're the
had
best.
some. Well, they had that huge streak of like I think what 10 or 11 straight games of losing extra innings, just
Mm.
not being able to come through in extra innings, losing a couple of like big streaks of losing 8 out of 10 or whatever those streaks were, and then coming out even into the All Star break and out of the All Star break, all of a sudden we're still in like 100 something win pace, trade for Max Scherzer, Trey Turner, and they're like, oh, we're still on like 100 something win pace, and the Giants are just not losing. Like I said, they're playing teams that you might think play spoiler, and then they don't because they're bad teams like the Padres and Diamondbacks and stuff, and the Rockies and
Yeah.
all that. And then basically our only hope in September was the Braves, and the big disappointment of losing that last series before September against the Giants definitely hurt. But there was like a lot of games that you could point to that could have swung this season around that they should have won, and they still won 106 games, and it's
Yeah.
just absolutely nuts. And the season came down to missed check swing call. So um,
Okay. Well, it also
then
came down to Mike Talkman robbing a home run, but whatever.
yes,
We don't talk about that. So
also Avisail Garcia just dropping a fly ball. Um,
it is like that's why I just don't ever buy into like if
no,
like one of those plays happens that swings a game like that, and then people are like, oh well, there's 162 games. This is why this matters. Like it's insane that those small little events here and there. It's just like holy
yeah,
crap, like yeah, that did decide this, like where we're at now, like home field advantage and everything that happened. It's just insane.
but yeah, so yeah, Dodgers came out 106 wins, still didn't catch the Giants, not for lack of effort, especially in September, and
Yeah.
passed the deadline, and yeah, survived the 1-game playoff, and forced the game 5 after being down 2-1, and it's it's do or die again. So we'll see what happens tomorrow with
Yep.
Urias on the mound.
Everything matters. Every little thing matters, and it also none of it matters because the only thing that matters is tomorrow night. That's all it is. It's Julio Urias. It's Logan Webb, like we said before.
Yeah.
You touched on Logan Webb having a defining first playoff start in his first game, which just sheer dominance. And this is a guy who I followed primarily because I had him on my fantasy team for a good amount of time. But
Yeah, it helps.
yeah, displays really, really disgusting stuff with his changeup and slider in particular. So I don't know if there's much more to say about what Webb is able to do, but
I think the only thing I really wanted to touch on
mm-hmm.
with Webb specifically is that so this is a number you're probably going to hear a lot on the broadcast tomorrow, maybe beforehand. So obviously, it's obvious Webb has had a ridiculously hot ending in the season. He's gone 20 straight starts without a loss, or 21 if you're including the playoffs. So in that streak, he's at a sub-2 ERA. I think the biggest thing, and this is apparent just watching the playoff game, but just apparent throughout the season, his home ERA is 1.79. On the road, it's like a 4.5. So, home field advantage obviously plays a huge factor in the situation. I think the only way you could really go wrong tomorrow, and obviously there's a few different ways, but
if they
if you
move
look at
ballparks, no, is that not it? Okay.
yeah, seriously, if there's wind, no, but no, the big thing is that a lot of his strikeouts in game one were obviously swinging strikeouts outside of the zone. Tomorrow, this is my prediction. The first starting pitcher to get taken out of the game, even if it's by 1 or 2 outs or whatever, the other team's going to win the game. Meaning the Dodgers are probably going to be taking a lot more pitches tomorrow, a lot more cautious, and he relies so much on those out of the zone strikes and those swinging strikes that if they're not biting as much tomorrow, and I know it's easier said than done, but that very well could be the thing where it's like, okay, maybe he's walking more people or whatever the case is. So, really, I mean, whichever, like I said, whichever starting pitcher gets knocked out of the game, I'm saying the other team's going to win.
Interesting
The
take on that.
Yeah, I
Um,
I agree with that. The key to Logan Webb's success was the swings out of the zone. A lot of that came from a couple of very bad strike calls on the outside part of the plate. That
we
both
do
teams
not
got
need
in
to
that
talk
game.
about. Yeah, the umpiring this year,
But
like I
it,
think the
but it,
the home
I
plate
mean,
umpire this tomorrow is one of the worst. I think it's Doug
It
Edding
is.
or whatever his name is.
It is.
He's one of the worst.
he is dead last in outside zone accuracy, which is horrible. And
Yeah.
this is a series where we had Angel Hernandez behind the plate. So yeah, who would have thought we were gonna miss Joe West as a playoff umpire?
Ted Barrett also was not good too. Like, let's
No, he
face it.
was
I mean,
not good at all.
where I'm trying not to just be hypercritical of umpires in general, but I mean, some of the worst umpires in the whole league have been officiating this series. That's just like
Yeah,
4 of them.
yeah, and
It's
yeah.
peak.
So
Crazy.
I
It's
mean,
peak
not
drama.
yeah. Logan Webb did a very good job mixing all 3 pitches, towing all 3 pitches. I'm not saying he was carried by the umpires, but
Yeah.
as I mean, when you're hitting and all of a sudden that 4 inches off the plate gets called, you tend to get a
Mm,
little more swing happy on whatever you see up there. So that certainly
yeah.
affects the game. And Logan Webb did a good job of playing to what he had, and
Yeah.
executed his pitches really well. We'll see tomorrow if he can execute the pitches like he has been, or maybe he
Mhm.
leaves more pitches over the plate, or maybe somehow Doug Eddings just doesn't call balls outside the zone. But we'll see exactly how that affects things. And you know, for Urias too, you know, he's got his pitch mix, but another guy who hasn't lost a start in a long time, so it'll be interesting to
Yeah,
see
that's
tomorrow.
true. No, it's an unbelievably equal matchup just in terms of history, stats, players. I mean, it's gonna be nuts. I'd actually like to pose a question, I guess to both
Sure.
of you, but a little bit more to Ray. And it's a pretty general question, so I'll let you guys take a little time to think about it. Who's your biggest X factor on both teams tomorrow? And like not like any obvious answers, like obviously the starting pitchers, anyone like that. Like, who do you think is really going to define like the tone of how well tomorrow goes? I'll start because obviously that means I've had a little time to think about it, and it's a little bit of a different one, and it's also just assuming that they play him. Austin Slater, he's really good against right-handed pitching. He's had very limited at bats this series in general, and when he has, he's made solid contact. Um, the fact of the matter is that the Giants' bats have been cold. Chris Bryant and Buster Posey are really the only two that have put together like a pretty consistent batting performance. And especially if they get someone like Slater near the top of the lineup and he's getting on base, he steals bases, and they get someone like Bryant or Posey to knock him in, I think he could really shift the tone of the game for sure. Um, I'm going to do one for the Dodgers too. And this one, I guess, maybe is a little bit more obvious. Just Trey Turner. I mean, I didn't realize until I looked it up, but I didn't realize that before last night, Trey Turner and Justin Turner were 1 for 29 combined. Now they're 4 for 35 is what I ended up finding. But it just doesn't feel like they've not done well this series, but it is weird to think that they are. So it also feels like either one of them is due. Um, and part of me just worries that Trey Turner's gonna have one of those games where he just lives up to his stat lines. So I'd say on the Dodgers end, he's definitely the X factor.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't know if X factor so much as I think it's going to come down to the MVPs in this game on both sides. Like it's Mookie Betts and like Cody Bellinger, especially like you know
Mm,
that kind of resurgence he's had. Like these are the players that will matter. Mookie Betts, I'll say, matters most. Like he hits leadoff, he sets the tone, and he's
he's
been
had a good
hot.
series,
He's
yeah.
been hot.
Yep.
And Chris Bryant, like for me, just straight up needs to have a defining game. Like this is the time for it. I don't know if there's a single X factor that exists on the Giants because their entire team is X factors. Um, that's the
I mean,
competition.
yeah.
But
I was curious on commentary on who you guys think could really
Yeah,
swing
I
this.
think it's
And
going to
like,
come
yeah,
down to the
those are
MVPs. If their MVPs come out to play, because they're all super capable hitters, capable of crushing either of these starting pitchers. So
mm,
yeah, I think that's what it comes down to. Super
yeah.
talented hitters.
I think for me, I agree with the Chris Bryant thing. He's been relatively quiet this series. Nothing too crazy from him. Like if he is another bat to be feared in that lineup, besides Buster Posey, especially with Urias going, they need another right-handed bat to really get going in this lineup. So if he can't really do it, then I don't know where else outside of maybe Posey they get production from. And for the Dodgers, it's Gavin Lux.
mm,
Sat the first couple games and
Gave us the
almost,
gif of the postseason as well.
yeah. I mean, really, if it's not for the weather in LA that night, that's a game tying homer. And
mm,
and then last night, I believe he got on 4 times
Yep, 4 out
in
of
game
4.
yeah,
4,
it's
and
true.
yeah,
It's
and
true.
was a huge factor in that game. So he's gonna play tomorrow against Webb, probably replacing Pollock, who struggles, especially against a guy like Webb with a slider like that in the postseason
So,
for whatever
yeah.
reason. AJ Pollock just can't hit in the postseason. But
Yeah.
you replace a guy like Pollock with a guy like Webb, and maybe you get some of that bottom line of production that they missed in game 1.
Yeah. No, that was originally going to be, because I was going to say Pollock is actually my X factor originally until I realized they probably won't play him, or at least not for like maybe until like a pinch hit at bat. Because that was actually weirdly enough the number one thing I noticed in person at game 1 was like I could probably count on one hand how many pitches Pollock actually like made contact with. Or I think it was like 2 out of like the 12 pitches that he saw. Like he just couldn't hit Webb's off speed. Going back to the Bryant thing, I'm pretty sure he's hitting like 500 for the series, if not just below that. So I don't know about him being quiet per se. Maybe just getting base hits when they don't matter. But
Yeah, stupid
I think
singles.
I think he just doesn't have like he doesn't have like the defining like moment of the series so far for him. Like Posey has his home run.
Yeah.
And Bryant.
Well, Bryant got a
he has
home run in
RBI
game
double
1
the
too.
series.
No, Bryant got a
he
home
did,
run in
yeah.
game 1.
He did,
Yeah.
yeah.
He has to live up to the hype of his 2016 playoff performance, mind you. So it's a little different standard.
That's true. No, I try not to remember 2016 playoffs. It's not a comfortable memory for us Giants fans.
Oh, you're welcome. So
that damn orange Chevron car. Anyway,
we gave our thoughts. All we can do now is watch. These are the 2 best teams in baseball, straight up. And the Giants might not be next year, honestly. Like I'm gonna be honest. The Giants, nobody would be surprised if they turn back into a perfectly average ball club, because that's where they were expected to be. And just trying to be like that. And the Dodgers too will have a lot of shuffling to do in the offseason as well, with some free agents and whatnot. So yeah.
Yep.
This is going to be one for the ages, hopefully. Please don't be a blowout game in either direction. That's all I'm hoping for.
Any score predictions? We want score predictions? Anybody?
I mean, obviously you guys are going to pick your own teams to win.
5-1 Dodgers.
And then break 4-2 Giants.
I'm going to say 17-13 slugfest. No, I'm just kidding. I have no idea. I have no concept. Like, both these pitchers could get torched, and then I don't know, like the bullpens could like get chipped away. Like anything could happen, or it could be like a 1-0 game. It's anybody's guess. But make sure you watch, or continue to watch, and we'll see if we're right about this being the World Series matchup right here. If the winner of this will go ahead to take it all home. So yeah, I think that's it for today. Ben, I just want to thank you again for taking the time to jump on and talk with us, give us this epic head-to-head matchup of analytical discussion. I guess I don't know. It was good though. It was civil. It was insightful. Do you have anything else that you wanted to add before we wrap things up?
Not really. I mean, just thanks for having me on. I mean, it's been an exciting season of baseball having back. I'd say, just in anything in relation to the games tomorrow, if I'm Gabe Kapler, you're only pitching 3 people tomorrow: Webb, Rogers, and Duvall. That's it. If they do that, if they manage to do that, they're going to win the game. But either way, it's kind of hard to be disappointed with this season in general, even regardless if the Dodgers win. They won't. But I'm just grateful to have this opportunity to talk to you guys about it. It's been a good time.
It has been a good time. Nice long podcast for today. Ray, any final thoughts as well?
Ben doesn't know what a patty melt is.
Okay, but this is public information now, Ray.
Yes.
Too far.
Yes. If anybody wants to hear a great Ben story regarding patty melts, hey, you know what? That's perfect. If anybody would like to hear some more details on the Ben patty melt story, let us know on social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, wherever, at BeatTheShiftBP, or in the comments, or YouTube comments, wherever you're listening. We will be happy to share. We'll be happy to share.
That was before a spring training game too, so maybe we could do like a spring training episode or something, whenever, and then I'll tell the story then.
There might be a lot of strong memories being resurfaced there. Be careful what you wish
got
for.
Loyal fans.
Be careful.
No,
what
I
you wish
remember
for.
it too well.
Yeah,
I remember it way too well.
yeah, in any case, we appreciate anybody who's still listening, who made it this far. You're a real one, and we will see you guys next time. Thanks, everybody, one last time. As always, Ray and Ben.
Peace.
Oh, is that we? Oh, wait, I did this last time. Peace. Bye.
Why is there a patty in my patty melt?
Okay.